A crisp evening breeze swept across the city streets, carrying the distant hum of car horns and commuter chatter. Barron Trump, dressed simply in jeans and a hooded sweater, walked side by side with his mother, Melania Trump. This wasn't their usual routine. No limos, no security detail, no flashing cameras. Melanie had agreed, albeit with motherly caution, to let Barron roam the streets for a taste of normal life. She herself was curious to see the city at ground level, away from the polished halls and events they typically attended. The two of them turned onto a narrower street lined with small shops, neon signs flickering against the dusky sky. Melanie kept a protective but subtle watch, ensuring no one recognized them. She hoped to give Barron the freedom he craved without compromising safety. Just as they passed an old convenience store, a soft voice rose above the background noise. "Tissues for sale. Please help." Barron paused, exchanging a glance with his mother. Near a shadowed corner stood a young girl, no more than 8 or 9, clutching small packets of tissues in her hands. Her jacket looked threadbare, her cheeks reddened from the cold. She raised her gaze, revealing a mixture of shyness and forced courage, hoping these passers-by might buy something. Melanie's heart clenched. She'd seen poverty in distant reports, but rarely so up close. Barron felt the same pull. They approached carefully. The girl tightened her hold on the tissues as though ready to run if they posed a threat. Barron spoke first. "Hey there, are you selling these?" The girl nodded, glancing at Melanie, who knelt down to the child's eye level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Melanie asked gently. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Rosa." Her voice trembled, equal parts hope and anxiety. Barron noticed the exhaustion in Rosa's eyes, like she'd been out here for hours. "It's pretty cold. Do you have somewhere warm to go?" Rosa's shoulders lifted in a tiny shrug. "Just a small room with my mom," she said. "She's sick. I have to earn a little money for her medicine." Her tone carried the weight of adult responsibility far beyond her years. Melanie exchanged a meaningful look with Barron. They couldn't just walk away. But how best to help? She quickly pulled a few bills from her coat pocket and offered them for a packet of tissues. Rosa's eyes widened at the sum, clearly more than the tissue packet's worth. "You're giving too much," Rosa murmured. Barron shook his head. "It's okay. Call it a little extra help." The girl's cheeks flushed with gratitude, but she stayed guarded, as though one moment of kindness might vanish if she blinked too long. Melanie asked softly, "Would it be all right if we met your mother? We might be able to help a bit more if she's okay with it." Rosa's gaze flicked to the side. "Sometimes people say that, then leave. Mom doesn't trust strangers." Melanie placed a gentle hand on Rosa's shoulder. "We understand. We promise we won't do anything to scare her." At length, Rosa nodded. "She's sleeping, but if you're serious, come with me." Barron and Melanie followed her through a series of dimly lit side streets, the city lights giving way to older buildings with cracked windows. Melanie stayed vigilant, scanning each corner in case someone recognized them or if danger lurked. But the only threat here seemed to be poverty itself. They reached a narrow doorway, paint peeling off the frame. Rosa fumbled with a small key, pushing the creaking door open. Inside, the hallway smelled of mildew and stale cigarette smoke. A single weak light bulb flickered overhead, giving the corridor an eerie glow. Melanie's maternal instincts kicked into high gear. This was no place for a child to grow up, yet it was all Rosa had. Climbing one short flight of worn stairs, they arrived at a tiny apartment door. Rosa knocked softly. "Mama, I'm back," she called. A tired voice from within answered. "Rosa? Are you okay?" The girl ushered Barron and Melanie inside. The space was cramped. A small bed shoved into one corner, a hot plate and mini-fridge along the opposite wall, and almost no windows to let in light. On the bed lay a frail-looking woman. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled from restless sleep. She tried to sit up, grimacing. "Rosa, who are these people?" she asked, alarm creeping into her tone. Melanie stepped forward, her expression calm and kind. "I'm sorry to intrude. Your daughter was out in the cold, selling tissues alone. We wanted to make sure she was safe and see if we can offer some help." The woman's eyes flicked nervously, landing on Barron, then Melanie again. We don't need charity," she muttered as if trying to preserve her dignity. Barron spoke up. "We understand. We just want to see if there's anything we can do. Are you okay?" The woman, who introduced herself as Sylvia, coughed lightly, pressing a hand to her lower back. "I injured myself, cleaning houses. Couldn't keep the job. No insurance. And now rent is overdue. Rosa tries to help, but..." Her voice cracked with emotion. Rosa hovered, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, as if uncertain whether to be embarrassed or relieved. Melanie noticed the girl's anxious, darting eyes. "Do you have any medical care at all?" she asked, concern thick in her tone. Sylvia looked away, tears threatening to fall. "Number, we can barely afford food, and the landlord is about to evict us. Rosa's been selling tissues to buy medicine for my back pain, but she's just a child." Barron felt a surge of compassion. He remembered how it felt when someone overlooked your voice or your needs, though admittedly his life was privileged in every other aspect. But how to help without overwhelming them or revealing who they truly were? He glanced at his mother, who gave a subtle nod. Melanie said quietly, "Let us at least get you some groceries and maybe arrange for a doctor to check your injury. We won't force you to accept more than you want, but your daughter shouldn't be out on the street like this." She tried to keep her voice from trembling. Sylvia opened her mouth, protests forming, but a sharp twinge in her back made her wince. She sank onto the bed, defeat shadowing her face. "All right," Sylvia whispered, "but I can't pay you back. Don't lead Rosa on with false hopes, please." Her pride warred with desperation in every syllable. Melanie knelt by the bed, gently touching Sylvia's hand. "No false hopes, I promise. Let us handle some immediate things, and we can figure out a plan together." Rosa shifted closer to her mother, shoulders easing a bit. Barron offered a small, encouraging smile to the girl. "We'll come back tomorrow with a few things. Do you need anything tonight?" Sylvia shook her head, though her eyes reflected deep worry. "We'll manage." Rosa quietly thanked them, gripping her little tissue packets like a security blanket. Melanie scribbled a phone number, one she used for private matters, and gave it to Sylvia. "If you have any emergency, call this number," she said gently. The mother nodded, clutching the paper with shaking fingers. Barron and Melanie backed out of the cramped room, leaving Rosa to secure the door behind them. Out in the musty hallway, Melanie took a moment to steady herself. "I had no idea it was this bad," she whispered, heart aching. Barron nodded gravely. "There must be hundreds of families like them." She exhaled. "We can't fix everything, but maybe we can help this one." They spent that night searching for low-cost medical clinics, rummaging through connections Barron had quietly built for philanthropic efforts. They found a small volunteer doctor willing to do house calls under the radar, plus a local grocery delivery service. Melanie insisted on paying for a month's worth of basics. Barron's mind swirled with caution. Revealing Trump might lead to publicity that'd embarrass Sylvia or overshadow the real issue. Better to keep it personal and discreet. By midnight, mother and son had a working plan. Groceries, doctor's exam, partial rent assistance if possible. It would require carefully handing money over without spooking Sylvia or the landlord. Melanie nodded solemnly. "Let's move fast. They don't have time to wait." Early the next morning, Barron and Melanie carried bags of groceries, milk, bread, fresh fruit, a bit of meat, to the address. The landlord, a stocky man with a permanent scowl, watched suspiciously as they climbed the stairs. Barron kept his head low. Melanie gave only a polite nod. Inside the cramped apartment, Rosa perked up at the sight of food. Sylvia tried to stand, wincing at the motion. "You really came back," Sylvia said, emotion thick in her voice. Melanie offered a gentle smile. "We keep our promises. I also have a doctor friend coming by soon, if that's okay. She won't charge you anything." Sylvia's eyes flooded with relief and a flicker of wariness. Thank you," she whispered, leaning on the bed frame for support. Barron set the groceries on a rickety table, noticing how Rosa hovered protectively near her mother. The little girl's eyes shone with gratitude, but she still seemed half expecting them to vanish. "Rosa, can you help me put these away?" Barron asked, distracting the child from her anxiety. She nodded eagerly, taking items to the mini-fridge. When the volunteer doctor arrived, an older woman with kind eyes, she examined Sylvia briefly, confirming a severe back strain that needed rest and possibly physical therapy. "You can recover," she said kindly, "but it'll take a few weeks of taking it easy. Any heavy lifting or cleaning jobs could make it worse." Sylvia swallowed hard, tears forming again. "That's how I earned a living." Melanie gently placed a hand on Sylvia's shoulder. "We'll see if we can find a less strenuous job once you're better." She glanced at Barron, who nodded. Already, he was mentally listing potential local nonprofits or small businesses that might hire Sylvia part-time. As the doctor left, Barron's gaze fell on the landlord's demands, scribbled on a slip of paper near the bed. "Rent due by next Friday. No excuses." He frowned, turning to his mother. She understood immediately. "Let's see if we can cover a bit of the rent," Melanie murmured. Sylvia opened her mouth in protest, but Melanie gave her a gentle look. "Think of it as an advance. Once you're back on your feet, you can pay it forward." Sylvia's chin trembled with conflicting emotions: relief, pride, confusion. "All right," she sighed. "I can't really say no, can I?" The landlord was less gruff than expected once Melanie handed over enough cash for a month's rent. He shrugged, pocketing the money. "Fine, I'll let him stay. But next month, no freebies." Barron hid his irritation behind a neutral expression. How could someone so callous treat a family in crisis this way? Rosa and her mother stood by the doorway, relief written all over their faces. Rosa fiddled with the tissue packet, her eyes flicking between Barron and Melanie as though she wanted to hug them but didn't dare. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you. No one else ever did this." Melanie leaned down, smoothing Rosa's hair softly. "We're just glad you won't be out in the cold. Focus on helping your mama get better, okay?" Rosa nodded, a small, genuine smile lighting her face for the first time. Over the next week, Barron and Melanie returned periodically, always with some groceries, sometimes with a few pain relief items for Sylvia's back. They never stayed too long, not wanting to draw attention. Rosa no longer had to sell tissues at night. Instead, she accompanied her mother to a low-key neighborhood clinic for checkups, with transportation quietly arranged by Melanie. Day by day, Sylvia recovered enough to stand and move around more confidently. She still couldn't do heavy labor, but at least she wasn't bedridden. Rosa's face grew brighter. She even talked about possibly going back to her old routine at school without worrying about eviction. Barron felt a swell of satisfaction. This was how direct, quiet help could genuinely change lives. Melanie began discreetly looking for a local part-time job suitable for Sylvia's condition. Through a small community nonprofit, she discovered a laundry that needed someone for folding and packaging garments, less strain on the back than heavy cleaning. She passed the lead to Sylvia, who nervously applied, helped by the nonprofit's recommendation. Throughout this process, Barron and Melanie tread carefully. Any slip might reveal who they were, opening a flood of media or scaring Sylvia. At one point, a neighbor glimpsed Melanie's face and seemed to do a double take, but she simply rushed by, head lowered, as Barron threw on a hoodie. Rosa never pressed them for their real identities. Maybe she sensed they were someone important, but it didn't matter to her beyond their genuine kindness. One evening, Barron carried in some fresh fruit while Melanie helped Rosa with a bit of homework. Sylvia was reading over a pamphlet for the laundry job. She looked up, eyes brimming with emotion. "If I get this job, I think we'll be okay." Barron offered an encouraging smile. "You can do it. And once you're stable, you won't need us around." Sylvia set the pamphlet aside. "I'm not sure how to thank you. I never believed strangers would do so much. You've given us time, dignity." By the second week, Sylvia had an interview at the laundry, hobbling in with a back brace. She got hired on a trial basis. Rosa squealed with excitement when her mother returned that afternoon, brandishing a small official paper confirming the job. Barron and Melanie popped in that same evening, bringing a modest celebratory pizza. The tiny apartment felt almost cheerful for once. Rosa giggled around a slice of pepperoni, glancing at Barron. "Guess I won't need to sell tissues again," she exclaimed with relief. Barron laughed softly. "I sure hope not." Melanie watched the two interact, warmth blossoming in her chest. She recalled how they'd found this girl alone and shivering. Now she was a child again, carefree for the moment. Sylvia looked on, tears of gratitude shining in her eyes. "You two. You must be angels or something," she teased, half joking. Melanie simply smiled, shaking her head. "We're just people who happened to cross paths with you." Yet, not all was smooth. One late visit, they bumped into a curious neighbor who eyed Melanie suspiciously. "Haven't I seen you somewhere before?" the neighbor asked, brow furrowed. Melanie's heart raced, but she feigned ignorance. "I doubt it," she said, moving swiftly past. Barron gently shielded his mother, hoping this wouldn't spark rumors. Rosa noticed but remained silent, perhaps guessing that her benefactors wished to stay anonymous. After almost 3 weeks of ongoing support, Sylvia's job was secure, her rent was temporarily squared away, and her back had improved enough that she could walk without wincing. Barron and Melanie felt it was time to reduce their presence. They didn't want to create dependence or attract attention. They arranged a small fund through the same nonprofit so that Sylvia could have a safety net if the laundry job hours were cut or an emergency arose. On their final direct visit, they brought some extra groceries, plus small learning books for Rosa. The girl beamed, hugging Melanie around the waist. "I'll miss you," she murmured. Barron patted Rosa's shoulder, adding, "We're not disappearing entirely. If you need us, you have that phone number." Sylvia's lips trembled with emotion. "I've never known people like you." There was so much she wanted to say, but words fell short. Melanie leaned in and whispered, "Just promise us you'll take care of yourselves. Get better every day. That's thanks enough." As they turned to leave, Rosa stopped Barron with a small tug on his sleeve. "Hey, I kind of know who you are," she said softly, glancing down the dim hallway to ensure nobody else listened. Barron froze, a hint of worry crossing his face. Rosa shrugged, offering a sweet, understanding smile. "I've seen pictures of your family before. I won't tell. Just thank you." Barron's mouth went dry. He glanced at his mother, who watched from a few steps away. In that moment, Melanie realized the girl's sharp instincts. With a gentle smile, Barron placed a hand on Rosa's shoulder. "It doesn't matter who I am. You deserve a chance at a good life." Rosa nodded, eyes shimmering. "You gave that to us." They descended the worn stairs, hearts heavy with an odd blend of sadness and fulfillment. Outside, the crisp air hit them. The city bustled as always, indifferent to the small miracle that had just unfolded within that tired apartment. Melanie looked at Barron, her voice low. "We did what we could. At least they have hope now." Barron nodded. "It feels strange to walk away, but that's how it should be. Sylvia can stand on her own feet." They shared a moment of silence before returning to their everyday reality, slipping back into a world of tinted SUVs and a family name that rarely went unrecognized. Word never reached tabloids or social media. No paparazzi swarmed that rundown building. No headlines declared Barron Trump rescues street girl. In truth, no one but Rosa, her mother, and perhaps a curious neighbor knew what truly happened. And that was exactly how Barron and Melanie wanted it. A pure act of compassion without spectacle. Weeks later, when Barron and his mother were busy with other obligations, Melanie received a modest envelope addressed to the private phone line they'd given Rosa. Inside was a brief note, handwritten in crooked letters. "Dear M and B, Mama's back is much better now. She likes her new job and says we won't worry about rent for a while. I go to school every day. Thank you for everything. I will never forget. Love, Rosa." Melanie read it in hushed awe, tears pricking her eyes. Barron leaned over her shoulder, reading along. A soft warmth spread between them, a quiet validation that their secret kindness had truly made a difference. No spotlight, no awards, just the life of a child and her mother, changed for the better. Barron set the letter down, exhaling. "We can't fix everyone's problems, but for them, we made a difference." Melanie nodded, eyes shining. One family at a time. That might be enough. They never told the rest of the world about Rosa, or the countless others who might be out there. But from that day on, Barron and his mother carried Rosa's letter in their hearts, a reminder that sometimes compassion is most powerful when it's given quietly. No cameras, no headlines, just genuine concern and the willingness to see another struggle and do something about it. In the hustle of everyday life, a single moment of empathy can transform an entire future. Kindness needs no spotlight, only a caring heart.